Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Rundown. This is episode number 24. September 12th is today's date. Let's get into it, beginning with Liturgy. Today is the 24th Sunday in Ordinary Time. We have the Memorial of St. John Chrysostom on Monday, Feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross on Tuesday, Our Lady of Sorrows on Wednesday, and Cornelius and Cyprian, early church martyrs, on Thursday. So it's really jam-packed here to start off the week. The 25th Sunday, next Sunday, and then some of our Asian martyrs on Monday, a whole group of them martyred for the faith there. Let's move on to college football. As we saw this weekend, Ohio State with their loss to Oregon, basically flip-flopping sort of positions in my top 25. USC, Utah, and Arizona State have an asterisk next to them because their game is in progress as I'm filming this video. It's actually the evening of September 11th as I speak. So I apologize, but that's kind of what's going on here at the moment. Notre Dame, a close call there with Toledo. So we'll be watching them very closely. Of course, Texas still sucks and Oklahoma is good. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. Arkansas certainly going to be near the top 25, at least in my opinion. Let's move on to the weather. As we have right now, 6 systems that we're watching over the next week at least. And again, to stay up to date on those, check out our tropical updates. We actually have a new one I didn't mention in the previous tropical update. So briefly, I want to go over what we're watching. We'll move from left to right. We have Invest 94L located over the Western Gulf, 90% chance formation within the next 48 hours. We expect tropical storm conditions anywhere from northern Mexico into Louisiana. Big concern with that. In terms of rainfall, not so much wind. North of the Bahamas, in about 3 to 4 days from now, we're watching an area for potential development that has a 20% chance from the Hurricane Center at the moment. There actually might be a second one right after this one in about 7 days from now that could also form near the same location. So we're watching that area for much of the week this week. We also will start at the top here. North of the Azores heading towards Portugal is a non-tropical low pressure system. If you remember Alpha last year, which actually made landfall in Portugal, the first tropical cyclone to do that, or subtropical cyclone to do that on record, a very similar thing may take place here, which would be quite interesting. There's been a little bit of model support on it, unlike Alpha, where I referenced it before the Hurricane Center started talking about it. I think Alpha had a much stronger signal than this one did, subtropical storm Alpha last year than this one. But again, 20% from the Hurricane Center, just something to keep our eye on, along with all these other storms. Invest 93L over the Cabo Verde Islands right now, 50% chance formation within the next 5 days. Not extremely favorable. The area just south of that going to come off in about 3 to 4 days from now. Very strong signal again from the European. And the GFS is now starting to get on board with that storm forming and impacting the Lesser Antilles. So we'll continue to monitor that. In a third tropical wave coming off the African coast in about 7 days from now that we're going to want to keep an eye on too. So lots of stuff to talk about here in the tropics, but we'll save in-depth discussion for the tropical updates. In Columbus, we're going to be around 90 degrees to kick off the week. It's going to be around 80 with storms and rain on Wednesday into early Thursday. On Thursday, it's going to be in the low to mid 80s, and that'll stay that way as we head into the weekend. We're looking at about a ½ inch to an inch of rain on the day on Thursday. So just keep an eye on that. Flooding, always a concern once we have a decent amount of rain in the forecast, and we do in this case. Oklahoma, of course, also flood prone. And finally, we're going to get a little bit of precipitation on Wednesday morning. May actually be storms with that, so we'll watch that for sure. It's also going to be really nice, a high in the mid-80s on Wednesday. It's going to be a beautiful day. The storms in the morning will keep it cool for the rest of the day. It might be a little muggy, but we're at least looking at the mid-80s instead of the mid-90s like we're going to have to start the week. going to be around 90 on Thursday, and then the mid-90s heading into next weekend again, as it stands right now. Let's move on to coronavirus video update number 26 on the year 88 since the beginning of this pandemic. New cases, it's kind of mixed bag in terms of all these graphs that I'll talk about. 17 states increased by 10% since last week, so that's certainly notable. But, there's a lot of work that we can still do, of course, especially in places like Tennessee, Wyoming, much of the U.S. Southeast, in terms of case counts. The death tolls, I believe, went down in one of the states, in several of the states, but one of the states for sure, but overall seemed to be up in a 10% increase again in 19 of the 50 states of the Union this week. So that's not good. If 19 states are increasing by 10%, that's quite significant. Again, current hospitalizations, the good news is most of this is on the decline, especially in Florida. Of note, no states are above that 10% increase, where we're really start to get concerned if somebody's increasing at 10% for hospitalization on the weekly basis. But that's not happening in any of the 50 states at the moment. Same thing with ICU. ICU down in almost every state, which is good. Of course, we don't want people in the ICU, because all these things are correlated in steps to the number of deaths. As we see, daily vaccinations is moving up in the Southeast, which is good. As we can see, that's the darkest green portion of the United States at the moment. So at least those areas that are less vaccinated are starting to get more vaccinated. Now, West Virginia, very low in terms of their daily vaccination rate, but that's kind of where we're at in the moment across the board, doing pretty well, I think, in my opinion at least. Again, the Northeast continues to lead the way in terms of the number of people with at least one dose. Of course, states like Oklahoma and Ohio, for example, not only because most of you are listening from there, but have increased, at least a few tenths of a percent in the past week, which, isn't bad. If we keep on going up by a few tenths of the percent each week, we'll eventually keep on getting towards that 70% or 80%, whatever they want us to be at. Again, the fully vaccinated is going to be 2 weeks behind the vaccinated rate. But as we can see at the moment, again, the Northeast doing very well. Ohio nearing that 50% mark, as well as Kentucky and Kansas, I believe. So we'll want to continue to monitor all those states. Of course, half the population would be ideal. Last week, this was the COVID vulnerability across the United States, and I like to use this because this really tells us how we're doing overall. And so I'll try to show you last week's and then this week's every single week. And if I just flip back and forth a few times, again, last week and this week, it really looks a lot better this week, especially Puerto Rico. We can see it. Some of the metro areas in the Northeast are now orange instead of red. Some of those counties in Oklahoma and Texas, we see changing colors. Of course, California changing colors as well. And so all of those things, I think, are contributing to much better COVID conditions here in the United States over the past few weeks. So hopefully we'll start to see those numbers come down. And I'll talk about that forecast here in a second. As we see here, 92.7% of the population over the age of 65 have at least their first dose. Of note with that, though, that's actually still increasing by about 0.3%. The other age categories, the total age category, is increasing by 0.8% generally for both first dose and fully vaccinated. So again, we're really starting to get there. Of adults, we're nearing 65%, which is decent. As we see, the CDC forecast infections are trending downward for the next several weeks. And actually, as we see, we had a low week this week. If you see, it's already starting to go down before the forecast had it going down. So that's always good news if we're having less COVID than expected. But of course, it's not good news that we're up another 500,000 current cases from where we were at last week, increasing all 10 of the top 10 states from last week. The top 10 remain the same. The only difference is Georgia hopped into the 3 slot because of their increases, slightly bigger than the rest of the United States. So there were another 12,000 deaths this week in the United States due to COVID-19. Worldwide, though, the good news, I guess, is that we're down 100,000 cases, active cases at the moment. We surpassed that 200 million recovery mark. And again, the only 2 out of the top 10 that are increasing are the United States and United Kingdom. The top 10 remain the same, though, different order, but they remain the same and decreasing aside from the United States and United Kingdom, as the U.S. increasing towards that 10 million mark. Hopefully they don't make it there. United Kingdom over 1 million, also of note on today's episode. Anyways, guys, that's all I have for now. Remember, just stay safe. If you have local recommendations to wear your mask, local mandates to wear your mask, wear it, even if you don't agree with the mandate. We want this pandemic to end as much as it may become an endemic instead of a pandemic. It's still something that we want to at least get back to some sort of normal with no masks and no fear in the general society at large. So again, things to hope for, things to pray for, and just do your part the best you can. Get vaccinated if you can. But, we don't have to go overboard about it and mandating it and stuff. Anyways, that's all I have for now. Chris, 6 for other Catholic Media.